Your wedding day is supposed to be a happy and memorable day. I've heard a lot of people feel stressed and overwhelmed and they're not able to enjoy the moment. But my husband and I chose to elope, have something low-key with our parents and outdoors and a beautiful park. It was supposed to be a special moment. The date we chose was the day we met 5 years before. It had significance. And it was a beautiful day. The morning of my wedding, however, it wasn't as happy as I would have liked. You see, the night before, my soon-to-be husband didn't get home until around 8:30 at night. And for the previous 2 weeks before our ceremony, he had just been really busy and a little different. And I didn't know what that was. We had been living together for 4.5 years. We worked together, and we had a routine, I suppose. And I thought everything was fine, but I did notice a change in his availability. For the majority of our relationship, my partner would call, text, pretty much throughout the day. Not incessantly, but basic little check-ins, because we did spend a lot of time separate. For the first 2 years, I worked in a separate career, separate job, 2.5 years. And he worked in his respective job. And the work that we do and did keeps us quite busy. So it was one of those things where there was a constant check-in, and it made me feel really nice to know that I was on his mind. And I didn't have to do anything. I didn't ask for that. I didn't require a check-in. I didn't do any of that. I wasn't really concerned about what he was doing. I trusted him. I had no reason not to. He came home every night. He was kind and loving, a bit moody, and the moodiness was something he actually had warned me about early on in the relationship, which, now that I think about it, was perhaps a red flag, because he was telling me he was trying to normalize his moodiness, which is something that he used as a tool to neglect me and to be passive aggressive, it turns out. But at the time, he had said to me, I suffer from this low-grade depression. I think it's called dysthymia. And it was something that he had basically said, this is my deal. Like, I don't get excited. I'm pretty my level of excitement is pretty low, and this is what it is. And so I just was like, oh, wow, I never heard of that, but wow, okay. And that was that, right? So when he would get in his moods very early on in the relationship, I would just give him his space, and not really, I'm not one of those women or people rather, that needs to constantly be in someone's face. So when I would sense that he was in a mood, or not really feeling very personable, I would take note of it and find a way to kind of just give him his headspace, because my understanding, especially with some men, was that, they're just not very verbal sometimes, and they just need their space. So that was kind of the way we functioned. I was pretty self-sufficient, not particularly needy. I had my own social life. I'm a bit of an introvert. And I like to work. So I was constantly working. I was usually the first person in the office, usually the last one out. And he was also a very diligent and hard worker. So it almost was like yin and yang. And as long as, at the end of the day, we came together and caught up and, spent that time together. And it was great. So there'd always been this habit of just trusting and knowing that we had each other's back, and that we were there for each other. And as I said, he was constantly letting me know that I was on his mind, which was really different. It wasn't anything I'd ever experienced, and it wasn't over the top. There weren't a lot of extreme expressions of affection or emotion or anything like that. I mean, he just seemed very low key and humble and thoughtful and just kind. And I thought, to myself, well, how did I get so lucky? Like, this guy is like super chill and laid back and non-confrontational and in touch with his, like, I don't want to say feminine side, just able to communicate, which was something that was really gratifying and welcomed. So I didn't think we had a bad relationship. I didn't think there was very much to worry about. I knew that he was not particularly happy in his position, that he was being overworked and, underappreciated, and there were just things that you could tell he just wasn't really satisfied. And so, after a while I decided, well, why don't you start doing what you're doing on your own? Like, you can do that. You've been doing this for over a decade. Why don't you just think about working for yourself? It seems like everywhere you go, you're not really appreciated, and, you can do this. And so I wound up starting the company, and that would eventually become the company that we would work in together. But it was one of those things where he just seemed so miserable and unhappy, and I didn't like the way he was being treated. So I just wanted him to. I felt like he could do it, and I felt like he would do a great job, and I was encouraging him to pursue entrepreneurship, which is a route I had gone several times in my life, and I just wanted him to be happy. I didn't like seeing him run down and moody and just not being satisfied and having regret and resentment. So that was kind of how it all started, with our working together and kind of moving towards this partnership. And it was, it was great. But was it? I guess when I think about it, I was already being groomed to accept this divergent and up and down and kind of hot and cold temperament that he had. And he was, very, very kind. He never snapped at me. He never raised his voice. And there would be times where, like, he might get frustrated. And he would think he yelled at me, and he would apologize and say to me, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean to yell at you. And I'd be like, that's a yell? That's a yell? Wow, if that's a yell, this is great. And I would be like, oh, it's no problem. Like, because I'm someone who's a pretty straight shooter, and I don't need to be handled with kid gloves. I'm just, pretty easy to kind of like get along with. And I felt that he was as well. And that's how I saw our relationship for the most part. So it's crazy how now, fast forward several years later, post-marriage, post-betrayal, post just so many things that I just don't understand. He seems to be one of the most difficult human beings I've ever encountered. He takes basic, straightforward conversations and makes them, turns them into circular, never-ending, unresolvable problems and issues. And it's almost like he goes out of his way to not understand the issues or to not be accountable for his role in some of the issues. And I think back and I'm like, when did that start happening? When did this person start to become less easy to understand, less difficult, more difficult, and less agreeable? I'm trying to recall when that shift happened, and I can't. It was so subtle. And it's tough because it took years and years and years for me to realize that I was with someone who wasn't very kind and didn't communicate, and who doesn't communicate well at all with me. And it's fascinating to see, because we do work in a professional environment together and we have clients and projects, and to see how well he communicates and how clear he communicates and how unaggressive and unconfrontational he is with clients, and how completely opposite it is with me. I don't know how that works. I don't know how, it's painful because it's like, wow, you really are choosing to do this with me. So yeah, it's, I'm still trying to put my finger on when I first noticed the change. And I can't remember. There's not one situation that stands out. And that's crazy and scary because we talked a lot. We spent a lot of time together, and this didn't happen overnight. So that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you for listening, and thank you for taking the time and allowing me to share. I hope everyone has a good night. Take care.